And then, like I mentioned earlier this week, I am in Chicago for the DNC right now. And there are two things that I want to talk about related to that. One short, one long. The first is related to liars and or stupid people. There are some people right now lying on my name saying that I'm getting paid by the DNC to be out here. That is 100% false. That is a lie. We requested for credential access, and that is the only thing they gave us. I booked and paid for my own flight. I booked and paid for my own hotel. I cannot speak to anyone else's experience, but I also know Hassan Piker, they're not gonna fucking pay Hassan Piker to come out here, and he's credentialed. That would arguably be one of the dumbest ways for them to spend money. I was watching a bit of a stream last night, and I was like, there are people saying he was paid to come out here so he could shit on Obama while Obama was giving his speech. But yeah, I just want to say that because 2 idiots becomes 4, becomes 8, becomes 16, becomes 32, becomes 64, becomes 128. But then secondly, regarding the DNC, we are now entering night 3. And so going into it, I wanted to try to consolidate all the highlights from the first 2 nights. Because unless you're chronically online or, you're a hardcore Democrat, you probably missed a lot. And there's just so much happening that it's hard to keep track of. So starting with Monday, of course, one of the biggest moments was Joe Biden passing the torch on to Kamala Harris. He started by taking the stage, embracing his daughter, and shedding a few tears. And then, after hitting some of his tried and true talking points, you had him hyping up Harris.
MAGA Republicans found out the power of women in 2022. And Donald Trump is going to find out the power of women in 2024. But she'll be a president our children can look up to. She'll be a president respected by world leaders because she already is. She'll be a president we can all be proud of. And she will be an historic president who puts her stamp on America's future.
And along with that, you had him reflecting on his career and his decision to step out of the race.
I've made a lot of mistakes in my career, but I gave my best to you. It's been the honor of my lifetime to serve as your president. I love the job, but I love my country more.
And notably, he also briefly mentioned what's commonly referred to as the war between Israel and Hamas.
Those protesters out in the street, they have a point. A lot of innocent people are being killed on both sides.
Right, because while it was much smaller than expected, we saw thousands of pro-Palestine protesters taking to the streets near the convention on Monday, with them notably saying it is not a war, it's a genocide, and that the U.S. is helping fund it. That said, in general, things were pretty peaceful, though reportedly there were also minor clashes with police, and some demonstrators tore down a fence at one point. At least 4 people got arrested. And notably, out there, you had creators like Hassan Piker checking out the protest, streaming himself among the crowds, talking to various demonstrators. But then also, beyond that, something that got some traction is that he took aim at Biden's comments about the protest, sharing the clip and writing, "Palestinians and Israelis in Gaza are both being killed by the IDF with the missiles we give them." And there, Hassan may be referring to the fact that some of the hostages have been killed in IDF attacks. In fact, Israel recovered the bodies of 6 hostages in Gaza this week. You have Hamas claiming that some were killed and wounded in Israeli airstrikes. But that said, the Israel-Gaza situation is just one issue coming up at the convention, and frankly, it's an issue mostly just being avoided. Though another big issue is abortion. Right, and there, a big moment on night 1 was Hadley Duvall taking the stage. Right, with her talking about how she was raped by her stepfather and became pregnant at 12, but thankfully she was able to get an abortion. And in her speech, she emphasized that she couldn't imagine not having a choice.
But today, that's the reality for many women and girls across the country because of Donald Trump's abortion bans.
Now there, I should say, Trump has said he believes in abortion ban exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. But also a key thing is that he's taken credit for overturning Roe v. Wade. And he's often tried to just pass the buck on the issue, saying that it should be left to the states. Right? And notably with that, there are now 9 states where abortion is banned with no exceptions for rape or incest. So it also wasn't just a focus on abortion bans. The whole far-right conservative agenda was under attack. With another big moment being when Michigan State Senator Mallory McMorrow brought an oversized printed version of Project 2025 and went straight into some of its most concerning policies.
And whatever you think it might be, it is so much worse. Okay, right here on page 535, it says, quote, "Reissue Trump's Schedule F executive order to permit discharge of non-performing employees." Now that doesn't sound that scary, right? But here's what it actually means in plain English. If Donald Trump gets back into the White House, he's going to fire civil servants like intelligence officers, engineers, and even federal prosecutors if he decides that they don't serve his personal agenda.
But then beyond that, we also have to talk about AOC's speech.
And I, for one, am tired of hearing about how a 2-bit union buster thinks of himself as more of a patriot than the woman who fights every single day day to lift working people out from under the boots to breathe, trampling on our way of life.
And there, you had a lot of people saying that her speech sort of marked the arrival of, quote, the new AOC. Because initially, she was sort of on the fringes of the Democratic Party, but she now had a primetime spot at the convention. And having been in the crowd both nights, she got some of the biggest responses from the crowd. Also, another viral night one moment was when Hillary Clinton took the stage. Some focused on her talking about the significance of having another woman fighting for the White House.
Together, we've put a lot of cracks in the highest, hardest glass ceiling. And you know what? On the other side of that glass ceiling is Kamala Harris raising her hand and taking the oath of office as our 47th President of the United States.
But then also another massive moment that got a lot of people fired up was when she started talking about Trump's criminal history.
Donald Trump fell asleep at his own trial. And when he woke up, he made his own kind of history. The first person to run for president with 34 felony convictions.
With the crowd then chanting, "Lock him up," and Clinton, without actually egging them on or anything, couldn't help but crack a smile and nod along a bit. And actually, that whole subject brings us to night two, right? Because one of the things that's gone viral online is the DNC made a parody Law and Order trailer around Trump.
In the criminal justice system, the people are represented by two separate yet equally important groups: the police who investigate crime, and the district attorneys who prosecute the offenders. This is the story of Donald Trump. And to take on this case, we need a president who has spent her life prosecuting perpetrators like Donald Trump.
But with night two, easily the biggest two speeches were Barack and Michelle Obama. I mean, you had Michelle saying Harris is one of the most qualified people ever to seek the office of the presidency. Though really, the part that blew the roof off the United Center was when she absolutely laid into Donald Trump, with her specifically alluding to racist comments that he's made against her and Barack, against Harris, or just in general.
For years, Donald Trump did everything in his power to try to make people fear us. See, his limited, narrow view of the world made him feel threatened by the existence of two hard-working, highly educated, successful people who happen to be black. I want to know, who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those black jobs?
And then with Barack, he highlighted the parallels between his own campaign back in 2008 and Harris's, with him going on to say,
"We need a president who actually cares about the millions of people all across this country who wake up every single day to do the essential, often thankless work. We need a president who will stand up for their right to bargain for better wages and working conditions. And Kamala will be that president. Yes, she can."
With that, then going on to chants of "Yes, she can," which is a throwback of Barack's own campaign slogan. And of course, as you might expect, he had more things to say about Donald Trump.
Here's a 78-year-old billionaire who has not stopped whining about his problems since he rode down his golden escalator 9 years ago. It has been a constant stream of gripes and grievances that's actually been getting worse now that he's afraid of losing to Kamala.
Though the really viral moment is what Obama said or implied immediately after that.
There's the childish nicknames, the crazy conspiracy theories, this weird obsession with crowd sizes.
Also, a big thing that's gotten attention is the fact that Democrats filled up not one, but two arenas last night, with Harris actually holding a rally in the same Milwaukee venue where Trump accepted the Republican nomination back in July. So notably, then also going back to Chicago, another speech that's worth mentioning is that you had former Trump press secretary Stephanie Grisham saying a few words. Right? And she's actually just one of several Republicans addressing the crowd and endorsing Harris, though her comments probably raised the most eyebrows. Right? Because she noted she wasn't just a supporter of the former president, but a true believer and one of his closest advisors. But then also with that, claiming that behind closed doors, Trump mocked his supporters as basement dwellers, and saying things like once he was upset when they visited a hospital and cameras were focused on intensive care unit patients rather than on him.
He has no empathy, no morals, and no fidelity to the truth. He used to tell me, "It doesn't matter what you say, Stephanie. Say it enough and people will believe you.
Though on the other side of this, you had a Trump campaign spokesperson saying, Stephanie Grisham is a stone-cold loser who clearly suffers from Trump derangement syndrome and many other mental issues. She's a liar and a fraud, and it's laughable she's willing to step behind a podium at the DNC, but was too scared to step behind the podium at the White House. But then also beyond all the speeches, there's been a lot of conversation about the quote-unquote vibes. And specifically with night 2, there was a lot of talk about the DNC roll call. Because that's typically when delegates cast their votes in person to select the party's nominee. And it's usually a very, very boring part of the convention. But this year, the DNC turned it into a party.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is DJ Cassidy, and I'd like to welcome you all to the Democratic National Convention roll call. Now we're gonna pass the mic from state to state so that all our voices are heard all around the nation.
And so yeah, each state cast its ceremonial vote while DJ Cassidy spun a track for each one. That is, except for my new home state, Georgia.
Georgia, how do you cast your vote?
Because out of nowhere, Lil Jon appeared and everyone lost their fucking minds. And also, while all of that was a lot of fun for a lot of people, the whole celebrity, music, pop culture element of support for the Democrats is a big deal. Because no offense to Lil Jon, there were people hoping for a bigger star. With late yesterday, there being a ton of rumors swirling that Taylor Swift or Beyonce might make an appearance. And actually with that, you had Tony Goldwyn, the actor who's been serving as one of the hosts for the DNC, arguing that an endorsement by either one of them could be significant to her election prospects. But notably, as of recording, these are all just rumors. But then finally, regarding the DNC, I want to end this where I started, the protests. Right? Because while all this other stuff has happened and that's gotten a lot of the focus, they haven't stopped. And in some ways, while they've been underwhelming compared to what was expected, they're also getting a lot of attention. Right? With us seeing things like last night, they clashed with police near Chicago's Israeli consulate. And at this point, it seems like at least a few dozen people have been arrested. And notably, the protests haven't just been happening in the streets. With us seeing things like Stephen Colbert doing a live taping of his show outside the DNC, where you had protesters interrupting during his interview with Nancy Pelosi.
There is, for the people at home who can't tell, there's a protest going on in the audience right now. Hold on, young lady, I can hear you. There's a protest going on right now. We're at actually the commercial break, but the subject is on Israel and Palestine. Yeah. And if you'll have a seat, we have to go to the commercial break. When we come back, I will ask the next question I had on that subject, if you will listen, okay?
And with that, Colbert kept his word, coming back after the break and asking Pelosi this.
People are protesting, even within the Democratic Party, there's dissension over what is the proper use of American power, especially our projected power overseas, both firm and soft power, if the goal is the peaceful and prosperous future for both Israelis and Palestinians. What role does the United States play?
Though with that, it appears online, each side kind of took what they wanted from that clip, right? You had some criticizing the protester and some criticizing Pelosi's response, which I'll link to. I'm not going to play. It was political and it wasn't changing anyone's mind. And it also very obviously wasn't the answer that the protester was looking for.
Well, as you can see from the continuing protest out here, that answer is unsatisfying to some people because they believe that the United States. Hold on 1 second. Would you like to respond to what they're saying?
Yeah, well, what I was saying is.
Will you listen to her response if she?
With their screaming, I can't hear them. But to those who have
they've
that
said
question,
that the United States should not have any role in supplying Israel arms to kill the people of Gaza.
Right in there, you had Pelosi going on to assert Israel's right to defend itself and calling for a two-state solution. And so basically, for all the talk about the protests, it doesn't really seem like we're seeing a Democratic policy shift there. But with all that said, whether you've been watching the last two nights or you're kind of just getting the highlight breakdown here, of course, I'd love to know your thoughts.